We have been doing reflection since we started school, isn't it? The big question right now is what's the difference that you are now a pre-service teacher? That you are now about to become a teacher in public school? This is the question that we'll try to answer in this lesson. Introduction to Writing Reflection for Pre-Service Teacher. Educators have provided definition of reflection. Example, Vincent believed that reflection is a process of looking back and learning from your experiences, looking forward to planning to improve performance. I highlighted key terms, your experiences, and improve performance. Take note that you have to examine your own experiences. It's not others, but rather your own, and that your goal is to improve your performance. Further reflection helps to process new experiences and new information to retain what we learn and articulate our arguments. If you notice, reflection has a flow, meaning you have to process new information and experiences, retain what you learn, and articulate your argument. You cannot articulate argument without processing those information, those new experiences. Others, like Timber et al., believe that reflection is a careful re-examination and evaluation of one's experience, belief, and knowledge. You are now on your senior year. It will follow Kimber et al., Kimber and colleagues' definition. You have to re-examine what have you learned throughout your start, your you have to re-examine what you have learned in this degree program from first year to third year up until now. What are those knowledge that you can say that you are ready to go into the teaching profession? As a result of doing reflection, Kimber et al. Believe that we become reflective practitioners. And the reflective practitioners are individuals who can face and deal with multifaceted problems. I purposely included this definition because we are right now in the midst of pandemic, and surely there are a lot of problems. For one, access to internet, our readiness to face and embrace online learning, our readiness to accept or learn flexible learning modalities on top of what we usually use on face-to-face learning. So, this time forward, re-examine before you continue with your field study. Re-examine, re-evaluate your experience from first year until now. What are those beliefs that you develop along the process? What are those knowledge that you think you are capable of when you assume your post as a teacher? Another question is why do we go on and on about reflection? Well, there are some information that we can get from doing reflection, repeated reflection, because active learning, according to some, reflective learning won't happen unless you reflect. This is the point na makaingon ka na, bitaw no, ako na siyang na-realize as I deal with, as I read more, as I watch the movie, as I reflect what has been done in the past. Reflecting on and during some experience in light of theoretical concepts or previous learning should lead to new insights into different aspects of that particular situation. It's like ngayon ka nga, mabitaw ni sa theory, pero as I observe in my classroom, I changes kung depende sa type of learners. So therefore, this allows you to generate new information observation. This has been learned, like this is what the theory says, but in the actual classroom, there are factors that sets observation or may not work. Doing reflection also allow us to see that the outcome of reflection is learning. This is what we call as aha moment. Aha, I found it. Something like that. Well, if you are reflecting something like this in the movie Kung Fu Panda, how to do reflection? Well, there are many ways of doing reflection. I can share you some like this. We have to embrace phenomenological attitude. As opposed in there is also what we call natural attitude, and there is what we call phenomenological attitude. What's the difference? In a natural attitude, as a student teacher, you are aware of what is actually present to you. Your surrounding world, you naturally. This is your familiar world. This is the domain of your everyday life. What do I mean by that? We see a classroom, but we don't question what's there in the classroom. We see students coming to the class, but we rarely ask the question, why are they going to the class? For what reason? Whereas in phenomenological attitude, which is what I'm trying to promote for you, is that you have to turn to the phenomenon. That is, you have to focus on the teaching and learning process. You have to focus on the why you go to school. You should instantly, intuitively aware of the reflexive, meaningful relation between you and that teaching learning process. Example, if you're watching movie, you might be watching the movie for no reason. Maybe you're watching movie but for leisure. But watching movie with a phenomenological attitude, you might be aware that what you are watching, like we will be. What I'm trying to advocate in this lesson is Kung Fu Panda. While you're watching, you are thinking of your relation of the movie in you as a student teacher. While it's a movie, you are also thinking of what are the things that you can learn from the movie as a student teacher. When we talked about teaching and learning process, we will build some key ideas or the key ideas in teaching and learning process, like the domains of education: cognitive, affective, psychomotor, or what are the elements of the teaching and learning process. You might be thinking about the teacher, the students, the capacity of the teacher to teach, the curriculum, the environment. These things are part of teaching and learning process. You have to focus and ask this and think of the meaningful relation of you and the teaching and learning process. I'll give here an example from Justin, how to turn to the teaching and learning process. Okay, so what you're going to do is to orient yourself towards the phenomenon that is on the teaching and learning process. What are the domains, what are the elements, how to teach, what are the teaching methods available, what are those that works in the past, what are those methodology that works with the current scenario, and identify what are those experiences that interested you and those that interest you. This is the objective of your observation. And you need to articulate the phenomenological question. The tip here is that you have to self-talk. According to sociocultural context, self-talk is conversing with yourself. Well, word of caution, ay lang po pag kusga pag self-talk. Somebody ang kadong di mo kayo kasi magduda niya. Ang sa naman nga akong anak, tarong pabakani. Ang sa naman akong silingan, tarong pabakani. Okay. So, articulate the phenomenological question. What is the objective for this observation? The answer to that is your objective, your purpose. This will orient you to the phenomenon at hand. What is the purpose of your observation? Okay, so the clue here is to self-talk. What is the objective for this observation? The answer to that is what you are trying to focus at that particular moment, at that particular observation. Keep asking, talking to yourself. And then you have to make in this process, while you are looking at the teaching and learning process, make your assumptions and understanding of the phenomenon explicit. I think this is similar to earlier definition. Make your assumption pre-understanding. As I've said, you're now a senior year. So what are those things? What are those things that you learned along the process, the teaching and learning process? You have to make clear of this. I suggest it's better that you have to come to the teaching observation ready rather than going there with nothing. So what are those things that you learned? For example, if the topic is about teaching strategies, look back on your subjects earlier. What are those strategies that work for these particular learners? You have to be explicit about this. You have to articulate, you have to write, you have to examine yourself. What are those you understand about teaching strategies? Talking about teaching strategies, we're trying to advocate shifting from teacher-centered to learner-centered. What are those strategies that work for learner-centered? And how? What are the conditions? So you have to state these things before you go to your observation. There are some software that will allow you to record. It can be a voice record so that you have something to look back, or you can video cam yourself, and then if you remember the movie Martian, so the scientist is recording himself. In this case, you can do a simple recording, audio recording, so that after an observation, you have something to review and then compare what you have observed and what you have understand beforehand. This is not a requirement, but this will surely help. And then in this process, phenomenological attitude, there is deliberate intentionality. Meaning, you have to have a purpose why you are doing the observation. As I've said, come ready. Come to the observation day or hour or the class observation ready. This is what we call exercising mindfulness. Be mindful what you are trying to achieve for that moment. As I've said, self-talk, ask this question. Ask this question, what is the objective for my observation? The answer to that is what is you're trying to achieve for that particular observation. Let me present to you some levels of reflection, and I think this will help us as we develop our reflective capability. This is from Larevi 2008. There are 4 levels pre-reflection. The quick question is, do this information indicate an absence of teaching? Usually at this time, the pre-reflection is that the teacher put the blame to the student rather than accepting, looking at what he or she can do as a teacher. What is it that you can do? I think you often hear the no more buzzword in education, teacher or student factor. As I've said earlier, if you are trying to put the blame, the reason of poor performance to student, so this is peer reflection. You don't examine what is it that you are doing as a teacher. The next level is surface reflection. The key question is, do this information focus on what of teaching? What are the details of how to teach? What are needed in the teaching process? The next level is pedagogical reflection. I often call this as methodological reflection. Why? Because you are asking the question how, the how teaching. How to teach learners with special needs? How to teach learner with behavior problems? The how. It's the execution. It is now using the pedagogy so that learning comes, so that learning can happen in that particular topic. And then the highest level, according to Larevi, is critical reflection. You are now asking the question why and for whose benefit. Why are you teaching and for what is it? What is the benefit of teaching? In here, I often call this as theoretical reflection, meaning you are asking why to try to explain a certain theory. Why learners come late? Why learners are not interested about mathematics, for example. According to a certain theory, this might be explained this way. So, the pedagogical aspect earlier, you are looking at the method of teaching. You explain certain scenario in the classroom observation and relate how is it that the students are behaving this way. Why is it the students using certain method perform better than the other method? And explaining uh, explaining that particular performance with a certain theory, you are now on critical reflection. These levels of reflection, our goal here is that you should be able to reach the fourth level of critical reflection. Okay, so are you ready to develop your critical reflection? I suggest at this moment that you have watched the Kung Fu Panda 1. This is from Osborne and Stevenson et al. Kung Fu Panda Paramount Pictures. This is also claimed Black et al. And DreamWorks. Okay, so this time, I'll give you the time to watch the movie Kung Fu Panda. Then get back and we'll discuss. Get back and write a reflection paper, and we will discuss how are these things, your reflection paper, similar or different from mine. Right, so we're done watching the movie. Time now to write a reflection paper. I assume you are now ready. Let me present to you my sample reflection paper from the movie Kung Fu Panda. If I am to write my reflection paper, it will be like this: the process of becoming an effective teacher. If you notice, I provided a title for my reflection paper. This because, according to our English class, this provides us the frame or the limit, or this guide us what we want to share in our paper. Okay, so as we know, as we compose, the paper should have the main idea, the body, and closing statement. So here, the animated film Kung Fu Panda is an excellent movie reflecting teaching process. So, as I I shared a while ago, while we are watching the movie, we exercise, phenomenological attitude, we see this as an opportunity to learn in the teaching and learning process. I believe becoming an effective teacher is a process. This is my main argument. Okay? Process means a journey with a series of steps. While different teachers have his or her unique experiences, Master Shifu in the video clip or in the movie walked through the following steps. Met, life-changing question. Second, meditation. Third, observation. Fourth, teaching and learning is a two-way process. Assessment is integral and learning must be enjoyable. So let's dissect this sample reflection. Here, I believe that becoming an effective teacher is a process. That's main argument. In this first paragraph, I also presented or introduced the details of this main argument. It highlighted in orange color. Okay, so since I have already introduced the details, I can now move to the next part. First, the journey starts with a life-changing question. This is my first detail. Okay, so notice I use the word first. This is a transition word. This will also provide signal coherence according to sequence. Okay, so the journey starts with a life-changing question. As an experienced teacher, Master Shifu has preconceived notion of teaching as in who, a seemingly untrainable but destined to become Dragon Warrior, asks Master Shifu this question. How are you going to change this into a Dragon Warrior? Well, Master Shifu answered, I don't know. At this time, maybe Master Shifu had experienced cognitive dissonance. In scenario like this, there is mental discomfort that results from holding two conflicting values, attitude. In here, you can explain more what is cognitive dissonance, how is it experienced in the classroom. Okay, so second, this is now the second detail. Because of the question, Master Shifu meditates on who he is as a teacher. The challenges they are facing because of the threats, they come up with a solution given the situation. He meditated in a quiet place. Perhaps I can now explain and introduce like studies have shown peaceful places to help in reflection. I can now theoretically explain according to William et al. Said that pwede na ka makadiscuss about meditation here. Okay, so third, keen observation help us understand who our learners are. In the movie, Master Shifu saw Pu jump 10 feet above the ground. How is it possible? Food must have been the trigger because Pu was distressed. It was the emotion before the start of the training camp. Well, Master Shifu admits that I cannot train the way I do. Master Shifu shows the Shufao whose reaction was priceless. There are theories that can explain this, like Maslow's theory of hierarchical needs and classical conditioning. So here, pwede na ko mag-discuss about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Why eating is motivation. And then I can also explain classical conditioning at this point. This is where I can introduce the critical reflection, the theoretical reflection. And then, that's the process. Fourth, fifth, sixth. And then, in summary, these elements can contribute to the journey of becoming an effective teacher. This is now in summary, it's a signal. Transition where the signals that it's now in a process. Right? So this is how I write my reflection paper. I As a recap, I prepare a title, and then here I introduce my main argument in the first paragraph. Together, I explain a little about what is that main argument, and then I introduce here. I introduce the details of this argument. Okay, that's on the first paragraph, and then the succeeding paragraph will be the detailed discussion of each of those details of the main argument. That is the body, and then in here I also use transition word, signal coherence, and then from each of these detail I can introduce methodological as well as theoretical reflection, or pedagogical and critical reflection. Right? So that's it for my sample reflection paper. Now that you have seen or read my sample reflection paper, how is it similar or different from your reflection paper? As a student and as a writer at the same time, you are the one writing your reflection. You have the power. Words have power. So therefore, from this reflection paper, tell us your journey of the learning experience in each of the module that we have in the field study. Utilize this power to convince us there what you have experienced in your observation is an indicative of the teaching and learning process. Let me remind you, students, as a writer, you become the writer right now because you are writing your reflection paper. You have the power. Words have power. So share to us your journey of the learning experience. Share with us the words that you journey on the teaching and learning process, and that convince us that what you have experienced is an indicative of the teaching and learning process. We'll go back to the big question. What's the difference now of your reflection paper? Maybe in the past, like elementary and junior high school, you're doing reflection as an academic exercise. Meaning, the teachers require you to write a paper that's an exercise of grammar, shows grammar. But this time, as a pre-service teacher, your reflection paper center on the teaching and learning process, and try to make a relation with this teaching and learning process and integrate it to yourself so that you become an effective teacher. I hope this helps. See you on other lessons.